Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash, this is AshQuest, and if you're like me, you've probably scoured Amazon with the keywords cheap miniatures or cheap fantasy miniatures, cheap D&D miniatures, whatever the case may be. You've probably come across a line of miniatures from Monster. Commonly, Monster makes card protectors, but they also dabble in miniatures, and they actually do quite a few miniatures. These are the Monster Adventure Minis figures. It's a pack of 56 miniatures with 28 unique figures, meaning 28 sculpts times 2. They are paintable, of course, and we have here 7 different races: humans, orcs, gnolls, goblins, zombies, skeletons, and kobolds. And I can't wait for those more pedantic of my viewers to come forward and say, skeletons are not a race. But the point of this video is to unbox these, let you know exactly what you'd be getting if you wanted to spend the $30 USD on this pack of 56 minis and see if it is serviceable, not superior, but will it work with your game. The perception of the quality of these miniatures may be a bit subjective, but I think we're probably going to concur on one point. 2 points. The first point being now the presentation of this box with all of these different minis in it is not as good as the single presentation of each race. You see, each one of these, I assume each baggie is separating the races into different bundles. Yes, each one of these has its own blister pack that you can buy separately. So if there's just like 1 or 2 races that you really want and you don't want to buy the whole thing here, you can do that. They're all on Amazon. They also have a bunch of like TV monster packages, and they've got another package of monsters that I didn't think was quite up to snuff. It's like dragons, fairies, centaurs, but I mean, if we go through these and I like them enough, I might buy that pack too and review it on the channel. Just let me know if that's something that you'd be interested in seeing. But without further ado, let's bust open one of these packages and compare them with some other miniatures to get a feel for the quality. We'll go ahead and start with zombies, and I'll give you a nice close look at the zombies here. These bags are resealable, so you can find out where they open and then just plorp your monsters out. You can reseal this, use it for something else if you'd like, toss it, all up to you, and just come down here. The other point I think we're all going to concur on is that these are not going to be the same quality as the HeroQuest miniatures, which is the main miniature I'm going to be comparing these against in this video. But I would still consider these to be pretty valuable, considering you're getting 56 minis to add into your game. And even if the quality is not really up to snuff, you can still use these for alternate situations, different kinds of monsters in the dungeon. For example, while this zombie, this well-known contemporary HeroQuest zombie, is armored and ready to fight, and even the classic zombies had giant machetes in their hand, indicating that they were willing to do combat with the heroes, not just lunge after them mindlessly to eat their brains and flesh. These zombies are much more of the classical variety. They are dressed as different townsfolk and villagers, and we've even got a zombie that it looks like a former knight, but these guys are clearly just shambling and rotting and just falling apart. They don't know combat. All they know is to lurch forward and eat, and these zombies can have slightly different stats in your HeroQuest game. Now, you'll notice the bases. I don't really know what's up with this shape of base. They're not circles, they're not squares. They're just this strange sort of hex pattern. It's not even a hex, it's 10-sided. So what is that? Decahexagonal? Decagonal? I think that's right. Anyway, really gross, especially if you decide to paint these guys. This one's torso is just falling out. On the bottom of the base, we get names for each of the different sculpts. This is the zombie running. Then we've got the zombie infected, and we've got the zombie grotesque. And if you want to know why grotesque, there's just a lot here that's grotesque. The zombie doesn't have arms, so definitely taking a debuff to its attack roll, that's for sure. But if it's zombie cake you're looking for, they've got it. And then armored is the 4th zombie here. Really cool to see a zombie wearing plate mail. And then there's even a little bit of detail in like the leg is rotting off, so it's just bone instead of being armored. See, the design is full of heart. The details might be a bit lost in a lot of ways, but the designs are pretty cool. It kind of makes me wonder if they were working in a lower fidelity with their sculpting software than you might if you were doing something with like HeroQuest. They just had like a lot of subdivisions, or maybe they had to design it that way intentionally because of the method that they had access to manufacture these. You see that they have mold lines on them. Some of them might be a bit hard to get to if you're picky and you want to spend the time cutting the mold lines off of these miniatures. Maybe they just couldn't be as precise with the tooling as they needed to be in order to make it worth it to make them more detailed. I don't know. But there are a lot of neat details in these miniatures. This guy's got like an axe, I think, buried into his neck. That's awesome. That's so metal. And then you look at the face and it's just, what happened? Scale-wise, they are advertised to be 28mm, but I do think that they would fit well in the HeroQuest universe, given that they are not heroic scale, the contemporary HeroQuest. That's the zombies. Let's move on. Ash here with a word from this video sponsor. You're the sponsor. There's new benefits on the Patreon, and if you join the Mighty Hero tier now, you will gain access to a monthly quest designed by me, exclusive to members of this tier and above. You'll have access to polls to be able to vote on upcoming content, and have a special role for the Amalgam Archive Discord server. You'll be credited as a supporter at the end of every YouTube video I make, and finally, gain access to heroic quests. That's a video game. All right, back to the video. All right, those of you who are looking for a new race to have in your HeroQuest game, meet the gnolls. You know, there's a lot of gnolls out there, but they're huge and hulking. These guys are kind of skinny. They're a little bit more jackal-esque. You could definitely go out and buy those big gnoll berserkers that you've seen from Reaper miniatures and stuff. I've got one of my own. They're all really cool, but these guys could definitely be the underlings, the lackeys, the ones who are just not as strong. The gnolls in training. Amusingly enough, you have a little bit of bend in these miniatures. I'm sure the hot water trick will fix that right up, but it does go to show that even though we have 4 different sculpts per race, you can take these minis and you can put them in hot water and conform them to slightly different poses just to make them even more unique if you so desire. And it might be worth it to do so anyway, because some of them are really leaning forwards, leaning towards their base there. I just realized this guy has a spear through him. There's no getting out of that. More on this in just a second. Look at his bent knife. Look at the way he's holding this shield. That is nuts. All right, we've got 4 different kinds of hyena warrior, and I'm going to go ahead and put an orc here just to compare details. Again, scale is pretty close to being spot on and matching. I don't think these guys are 28mm at all. Actually, these are hyena warriors, and this is the spellcaster. Indeed, you've got a staff, magic staff, and you've got a knife. And the spellcaster also is wearing clothes. You could interpret this as a female hyena. That would be pretty cool. This little guy is known as the beta. You get 2 of those, of course, and then you get the hyena warrior archers, which I showed off, and the hyena warrior alpha. You get 2 alphas, which is a bit strange, but maybe that's okay in hyena society to have 2 alphas. But what I would definitely do is put this in hot water and maybe make this arm not quite so awkward, as well as make them stand up just a little bit straighter. Come on, you're an alpha. Be an example to your community. Next up, we're going to be looking at the orcs. Yes, this comes with orcs. But I'm going to warn you now, don't get your hopes up. These orcs are a little bit different. Obviously, we should use the orc again for comparison to these new orcs, but these aren't quite orcs to me. They just don't quite yell, scream orc to me. But, you know, you could rename these guys. They could be lesser orc citizens, lesser orc denizens that didn't make it into the ranks of the Chaos armies or the Dread armies around the world. So, of course, their appearance could be a little bit different because we're used to seeing the best of the best, the alpha orcs, the orcs that made it into the Dread ranks. Or you could call these an entirely different race. They could be hobgoblins, they could be bugbears. Doesn't really matter what it says on the base. Interpretation is king. This is an orc berserker. That's a lot of hair. That's a lot of hair. I don't know about that. I've seen orcs with hair before, but I prefer the way World of Warcraft does it. If you're going to go that route, this is an orc archer. Funnily enough, I only seem to have one of these guys, again with the lots and lots of hair. But the sculpt isn't bad, looks fine, very warmly dressed, kind of looks like he should be in a cold climate. These are actually orcs as well, and they're called orc heavies. And more than anything, they look like ogres of a kind, even classic ogres. But they've got the massive flails. They are carrying flails with long, heavy chains and boulders attached to the end of them to punish anybody who would be in their way. Really cool weapon too. This design on this weapon is really cool. Fingers are wrapped around an area on the shaft there that allows them to handle it two-handed. That's cool. But orc, I don't know about that. I don't know. That's a strange interpretation of an orc next to our familiar orc. These are the orcs. All right, next up we've got the humans, the most filthy and disgusting of all of the races. The humans are here, existing. Actually, this is a bit hard to see. So let's see if we can focus just a little bit better. This guy looks like he's from Nightbreed. That old, what was it, Clive Barker film. He's got the bandaged face. I don't know what's going on here. Wearing a trench coat, has a curved sword and a really large shield. I don't quite get it, but some kind of militia, you could say. The rogues here, bandit assassin. That's what this is called. He looks a lot cooler. He or perhaps she, likely she, looks a lot cooler. I can deal with that. It's clear to see as well with the hooded cloak and the daggers what kind of character this is on the board. These are bandit leaders. They actually aren't categorized as humans, they're categorized as bandits. So, leader, assassin, another hero quest figure just for scale and comparison, and then you've got the bandit scout, which is the archer of this group. Long hair, arrows at the side for this short bow. Don't know what's going on back here. I guess this could be not as conservatively dressed as a female archer as I may have thought at first glance. It might not be female. I don't know. The sculpts, again, a little bit weird, inconsistent with how they did some of their stuff. The leg is skinny on one side. It's really big on the other, but you can see that's because it's got to merge with this. I don't know. This drape of the cloak. Not sure. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter when you're that far away. Could matter if you're a stickler for details, absolutely. But we do have a bandit spellcaster as well. In the process of casting a spell, you get 2 of these, so you could make them polar opposites, one blue, one red. And you could have these bandits in your quest, paint them up a completely different color than the colors that are already used by the different factions, if you will, that are in Hero Quest. Make it clear that these are followers of not Chaos nor the Empire. They're just outlaws, and you can go through and smack them around to take them off the board before they cause you any trouble. You could also have it to where, like, they're the mercenaries. You've got 4 sculpts here who will step in and be mercenaries for your heroes, and your mercenaries are a little bit different since you've got a spellcaster, but you know, maybe we want a spellcaster. Anyway, those are the humans, I mean bandits. You know, now that I'm opening these up, I'm kind of surprised that we don't have dwarves and we don't have elves. So, like, this is actually kind of lacking. Now, why would that surprise me? Because our next race is the monster race kobold. I'll put a goblin for comparison, although Hero Quest doesn't have any kobolds or really any other short races except for the ice gremlins. These are kobolds. This is the spellcaster, and the spellcaster is pointing, perhaps getting ready to cast a spell, has magic staff in hand, hood. You can see the little lizardy feet on these boys. Next up, we've got the kobold berserker, getting ready to swing a club, a very dynamic, action-packed pose. Details are just enough to get by. Next up, the kobold archer. Bet you didn't know that's where that was going. I'm going to go ahead and get a better focus on this guy. I actually really like the pose on this. Everything is very crisp. Everything is very detailed. Don't like that support there. Very unfortunate place to have a support. We'll probably snip that off, or I guess it could be the belt hanging down. Still, not sure about that. Probably not a problem. Probably, maybe it's just me. What does that say about me? We move on to the next one. This is the kobold pikeman. And you know what? He's fine. I really like the lizard feet and the tails on these guys, and I especially like the way the heads are shaped. I like the dinosaur / sort of lizardy type of kobolds myself. Are you a more lizardy kobold or more of a dog-like kobold? You could paint these up, make them their own faction, throw them in your Hero Quest game, use them temporarily till you get some better kobolds if you can find them, or until you can afford them. Next up is goblins, and I don't know why I've got goblins in 2 bags instead of 1. Now, I know some of you out there are like, just get a 3D printer and you can print all these. Well, some of you guys don't have 3D printers, and you've got just enough money to throw on some miniatures, and you'd like to have lots of bang for your buck, and you'd also like to be able to paint with some confidence, and these are paintable, and if you mess them up, they're fairly economically priced, so it's not really the end of the world. I think that's the mindset with which we should approach these guys. All these guys are named. This is the Goblin Arbalist. Very, it's cool, you know, that's cool. They got mohawks, which I pretty much dig. We have crossbows. They scale strangely to the Hero Quest goblins, for sure. They would almost have to be like smarter snotlings, which is impossible. So I'm not sure. You could probably color them green and sneak them in and be done with it, but we do have goblin archers in the official game now, so maybe this is just redundant, but this should give you some extra ranged firepower. You've got goblin melee. That's literally what it's called. These guys are facing way too forward. I kind of like that they decided to give them some kind of detail in their face. They look a little scary. They almost look like Pathfinder goblins, but the faces aren't as wide. And they've got, I don't know, is that a hammer? Is that literally a hammer he's walking around with? I like the abs, the pants, the chest strap is really cool. Yeah, all that's pretty neat. Like I said, they're really cool with some of the details they have, and other details fall flat. It's so inconsistent. This is called the Goblin Leader, and again, he's giving me Pathfinder vibes for sure. I don't know exactly what it is, but he's a dual wielder. He's got pauldrons. Looks like he's got more status than a regular goblin. And finally, the Goblin Spellcaster. And yeah, you know what? I don't have much fault here. Might be asking, is that flash? I think it is. Does my other goblin have it? No. So that was flash. Again, you may need to peel off some of the flash. There's flash on the base of this one, so might need to get yourself a hobby knife. I'm so sorry for the camera going in and out of focus like that. I'm really confusing it here. I'm really pushing it to its limits, trying to show it something so close up. And now it's time for the one that I wanted to save for last because I thought it might be the coolest and the one with the most utility, and that's the skeletons, because you can screw up all the other monsters just a little bit and it's fine. But it kind of doesn't matter what you do with a skeleton. A skeleton is always going to have a really cool, really kooky, unique presence on the board, kind of no matter what. So we'll arrange these by order of coolness, in my opinion, and then we'll see if you guys agree. And all right, this is the Skeleton Arbalist, not nearly as cool as the Skeleton Archers that we have with Against the Ogre Horde. That is for certain. We'll go ahead and put a Hero Quest skeleton next to them in scale. But you know what? These guys are short enough that it kind of doesn't matter. You could call these goblin skeletons. You could call them dwarf skeletons, which is super important. We don't have nearly enough of those. I don't know why these skeletons are so short, because while I just said that these were the same scale, it turns out the skeletons in the same set are taller, like abnormally taller than these guys. So I don't know what's going on here. I think it's most likely they just didn't pay attention to scale whatsoever. They just sculpted something and they sized it up. They eyeballed it. They said, that's fine, go ahead and print it. But yeah, skeleton arbalists. Next up, we've got these guys, and they look so goofy. These are skeleton melees, and I don't think you would seriously be able to use them in your game of Hero Quest unless you wanted to say that these horns represented that they were from some other race. I mean, look, they're naked, they've got one pauldron, horn helmet, they've got this expression on their oversized bony head, and I think that's really the big problem for me. If you shrunk down the head a little bit, they'd be perfectly fine. I don't know, maybe you could find it in your heart to use these, perhaps with the contemporary, perhaps with the classic Hero Quest, because these do seem a little bit more heroic scale because of the exaggerated head, and they are carrying maces, so I mean they got that going for them. Next up is something called the Skeleton Mystic, and this is where things start to get really cool. This skeleton is like literally on fire, coming out of smoke. The head is much more properly sized with the rest of the mini, and I would be proud to put this in my game of Hero Quest as like the Skeleton Mage. This guy is awesome. There are better ones out there for sure, yeah, but compared to everything else we've seen, this one just looks so cool. There's so much interpretation you can do here. It's holding something in its arm, dagger. I'm honestly not sure. There's just so much flame and smoke. You could interpret this a lot of different ways. You could place it on the board and then players know this is a force to be reckoned with. You've got two of them. The spellcaster of the group, Skeleton Mystic. And finally, this one. I have a slight problem again with the size of the head on this one. This is the Skeleton Savage, but the four arms outweigh this concern that I have. The players are going to be looking at the arms. They'll look at the head a little bit, but they'll look at the arms, and they'll know that this was not a normal human, so the size of the head is even less relevant. This thing having 4 arms means it could attack several times per turn. It's just going to be a big pain. It could even have like a whirlwind attack where it attacks everything all around it. Plus, it's dressed in this coat, which is really cool. Has a hood and everything. I'm simping for these skeletons. I love them. All right, and that, brave heroes, is the Monster Adventure Minis figures. A very unfortunately titled package, very whatever it is what it is presentation. But is it worth 30 USD? To me it is, because I'm going to be using these to prototype my game. God, I wish I hadn't done that. They're all gray. I wish I had not just done that. I'm going to have to separate them all. I'm going to have to separate all these. I'm going to use them as prototype monsters for my game so that I have clear indicators on the board while I'm moving my characters around and stuff where people are, and I'll immediately be able to know who they are because I'm going to color them all differently, and I'll share that in a future video. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. I hope you found this useful. Are you going to buy these? Are you going to buy the other monster packs that are available? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you'd like me to buy one and unbox it, and I'll do that. So anyway, big thanks to my patrons who have helped me afford stuff like this to put in the videos so I can hopefully help people make better decisions about what they're buying. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye for now.